Hi everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back, and to those who are new, thanks for checking out my channel. Today I am going to talk about the books that I read in April. I read 22 books altogether in April, but I'm not going to be talking about all of them in this video. So 4 of those books were for the Mondays with Margaret series. So please check that out if you are interested in any Margaret Atwood books. I will leave a link to those videos in the description box below. April is also National Poetry Month, so I read 10 poetry collections and I already did a video on that, so I will leave a link for that too. And I also read a couple of books for the 100-day commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda. And I will share those in the next video in the Kwibuka Read series. So I will leave a link to that playlist below as well, and I will be doing the next video for that probably in 2 to 3 weeks. So today I am going to tell you about the other 8 novels I finished. So let's get started. I'm going to start with the fiction novels. I read 5 of them, and first up is How the One-Armed Sister Sweeps Her House by Cherie Jones. And Cherie Jones is a writer from Barbados, and this is her debut novel. I've mentioned this novel a few times, but this month I finally read it. So from its title to the very end, this is a slow burn, intriguing story. It's set in Barbados in a fictional place called Baxter Beach. The main characters are Lala and her husband Aiden, and Lala has a real talent for doing hair. She braids hair for the tourists, and Aiden basically cons the tourists and steals from them and sells drugs to them. And he's not very kind. He's an abusive, violent, and cruel man. And when Lala finds out that she's pregnant, she has hopes of the baby turning their lives around. And when Lala goes into labor, she ends up at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it also introduces us to another woman that we get glimpses into her life and how her life is connected to Lala and Aiden. So after the baby girl is born, Aiden has a strong connection to her, and Lala adores her. And unfortunately, even more tragedy strikes, and it's so horrible. It sends Aiden, Lala, and their friend Tone spiraling and panicking. It actually sent me spiraling a bit too. Now Lala, Aiden, and Tone each make decisions that will affect all of them for better or worse. This novel is beautifully written. I loved the use of language and the Caribbean dialect. I like how the culture was brought into the story. It was done in subtle but unmistakable ways. And the story is a heavy one. There's themes of marriage, crime, violence, excuse me, death and grief. It's all part of the story, and a heads up that there is a lot of domestic violence. The next novel is also a debut with an interesting title. You Are Eating an Orange, You Are Naked by Canadian-Chinese author Sheung-King. This is a quick read coming in at under 200 pages, and I had high hopes for it. There are things that I really liked about it, and then there are things that I didn't really like. This is character-driven, which I do like, and it is about a couple in a relationship, and as they travel to different cities and countries, they tell each other stories of their lives, folk tales, or just random stories that they've heard. And we are never told their names, and we only get glimpses into who they are from the narrator and through the stories that they tell each other. So the character development happens, but it happens at a turtle's pace. The writing style is simple with some interesting patterns. I enjoyed the way food was used and the way the reader is drawn into the story, witnessing the couple, but you're not intruding on the couple, and it has an intimacy to it. The female character is a bit more mysterious, which was an interesting element. I can't really say that I cared for her. Sometimes the way that she treated the man was quite horrible, and I kept thinking that if the roles were reversed, it would be, understood quite differently. Their topics of conversation are interesting. They talk about gambling, the purpose of life, love and marriage, and cucumber sandwiches as metaphors. The stories were often reflections about their own relationship, and I'm not sure that I always got that. I was not a fan of the last section of the book, and I kind of lost interest, and the ending didn't pull me back. So I liked it enough to be interested in reading more from this author. I think that he has potential to give us some amazing stories, so I'll be watching for him. The next fiction novel is the second novel by Cynthia Sweeney called Good Company. This is also a character-driven, slow burn kind of read. Flora is the protagonist, and she believes that her life is pretty much perfect, and it does seem that way. She's happily married to Julian, who runs a small theater company called Good Company. They have a daughter, Ruby, that is heading to university. And Flora is also close to her best friend, Margot, who always has her back and is finding success as a television star. So Flora believes that you never know what goes on behind closed doors, but that she knows what goes on behind her own closed doors. But does she really? And this is a story about marriage and friendship, infidelity, betrayal, and just how quickly marriages and friendships can unravel, but probably not the way that you think. So Flora finds Julian's wedding ring that he said he lost, and this is when Flora knows that something is wrong. And when she finds out the truth, she feels like her whole world is caving in on her. She has sacrificed a lot for their lives, and she wonders if it's all for nothing. So with this novel, if you are looking for action, you won't find it here. It's well written. It's written in third person, and it gives the alternating perspectives of Flora, Julian, and Margot. There is some interesting symbolism along the way, and in the end, it does all come together. One of the most difficult things for me was how it jumps around. So it goes from the present to the summer that the ring was lost to a few years just after that summer. And because of the back and forth of 3 different people, I found that I didn't really connect as much with them as I would have liked to, and it sometimes felt a bit choppy to me. So I didn't enjoy this one as much as her debut novel, but I am glad that I read it. I think it is important to know that it is not a fast-paced novel at all. It's more about how people deal with things, and the reader is kind of along for the psychological journey. So next is The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book has had a lot of hype, but I wasn't swayed by that so much because Reid's book, Daisy Jones and the Six, also had tons of hype, and I didn't seem to enjoy it as much as everyone else did. So I was hesitant going into this one. However, the verdict is that I loved this book. I would say that this was my favorite read of the month. The story begins in 2017 when Evelyn Hugo, who is a Hollywood icon, and made her way to LA in the 1950s to become famous. She hires an unknown journalist named Monique Grant to write her biography. And Evelyn is used to turning heads with her beauty, selling tickets to her movies that she's in, and as she gets more successful, more people want a piece of her. But the media and public persona has been wrong all along. And she shares her life story with Monique, from how she became an actress, how she used her ambition to find fame, how she married 7 men, and the legacy that she wants to leave behind. The story that Evelyn wants to tell is about the other side of the glamour and fame, the social politics, the sexual politics, the secrets, the friendships, and the true love of Evelyn's life. And she wants people to know the truth from her, and she also has a connection to Monique that I wasn't expecting. So I think that Reid developed a character that we can all understand. If you think like a Latino Liz Taylor with Marilyn Monroe hair, who uses sex as a tool to get what she wants, but who is like everyone else and just wants to be loved for who she truly is. I thought that this was exceptional. My last fiction book is Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi, and it's translated from the Japanese by Jeffrey Chaucelet. I love the concept of this novel. It's a cafe in Tokyo that has a seat that patrons can travel back in time. They just need to be back before the coffee gets cold. And it seemed to have so much potential, but the execution of it is lacking for me. It's basically 4 interconnected stories about people who are looking for closure or to repair a relationship. So a lover who got away, a husband with Alzheimer's, to reconnect with a sibling, and to get to know your child. And these all sound like they could be heartwarming stories, and there are some endearing moments. I'm not, completely heartless. I just found that it didn't reach its overall potential. The rules to this became too unrealistic, and they kept changing or being added to, and there was a bit of repetition, which I didn't think was needed. I kept thinking that maybe it was the translation, but I actually don't think it is. But it's a quick read, so I'm not sorry I read it, but I'm not going to be quick to go out and read the sequel to this one. So the last 3 books are all non-fiction, and I will start with this one, which is really more of an essay. It's called Dear Sir, I Intend to Burn Your Book by Canadian author Lawrence Hill. And this is maybe 50 pages, if that. Oh, not even, 33 pages. So this came from a letter that Lawrence Hill received from a man who let him know that he was going to burn Hill's novel, The Book of Negroes, which is also titled Someone Knows My Name in some countries, and it's also known as Aminata in some other places. So it's true that the title of this novel has received a lot of press, and Hill explains the title and talks about banning and burning books in our time. And I am intrigued by the topic of censorship when it comes to literature. So if that is a topic that interests you, then you might want to check this out and see what he says in this one. Next is another one that had some controversy about its title when it came out, The Inconvenient Indian by Thomas King. King explains the title early on in this one and then takes the reader back to pre-colonialism, the first interactions between Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, up until present day. And I've mentioned this before about Thomas King, who I love, but he has an uncanny way of using his humor when delivering a serious message, and he does that several times in this book. And as always with King, I also learned a lot when it comes to treaties, and I appreciated many of the things he talks about when it comes to the portrayal of Indigenous peoples, especially in regard to movies and pop culture. And I also love the many references he makes to his wife in this. I think that this book is important for everyone to read to help build a better understanding of Indigenous and non-Indigenous relationships. And I also appreciate how King always ends with hope. And last but not least is a short story collection memoir humor book by Nora Ephron called I Feel Bad About My Neck and Other Thoughts on Being a Woman. This was my April book club book, and it was a fun and funny read. Nora Ephron was a writer and filmmaker. You probably know her movies like When Harry Met Sally, You've Got Mail, Sleepless in Seattle, Julie and Julia. So in these short stories, which she wrote in her 60s, she shares the struggles of being a woman, the problems with purses, what happens to older women's necks, rent control in New York City, her love of cooking and wanting to, impress her guests and have everything perfect, everyday problems, and of course, aging. And I didn't love all of the stories. There were definitely some that I enjoyed more than some of the others, but I do love that it takes place in New York, where Ephron lived. So there are, many references to New York and New York places, and it has a Manhattan vibe to it for sure. It was for me just a fun and lighthearted read, which is good once in a while. So I will list all of the books and authors that I mentioned in the description box below. Please let me know if you have read any of the books on this list, or if they are on your TBR pile. What books did you read and enjoy in April? Are there any that you read that you think I should check out and take a look at? I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. Thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.